Good morning, everyone. Welcome and thank you for joining today's webinar, Think Fast, Act Faster, Incident Response That Works. My name is Amanda Deshuk, and I'm excited to officially kick off our A&M Pathway series. At the end of today's session, I'll share details on our next webinar with J.R. Garcia, your AI Security Blueprint, Govern, Map, Measure, and Manage. Before we dive in, I'd like to cover a few quick housekeeping items. Today's webinar is being recorded. We'll send you over the link after this session so you can rewatch the content and share it with your colleagues. We encourage your questions and comments throughout the webinar. Please use the Q&A box at the top of your screen. I'll be monitoring that and we'll bring your question to our speakers at the very end of the presentation. Now I'd like to introduce today's presenters, Augie, Solutions Architect at A&M, and Kevin Snoddy, Cybersecurity Solution Architect at A&M. Together, they'll walk us through what separates effective incident response teams from those always playing catch up, the insights you can put into practice right away. With that, I'll turn it over to our first speaker, Kevin Snoddy. The floor is yours.
Thanks, Amanda. Good morning, everybody. I'm Kevin Snoddy, Cybersecurity Solution Architect at A&M, and I cover the Colorado and Wyoming markets. I spent the first part of my career in K-12 as a customer, and then the last 4 years I've been at A&M and over 20 years in the industry. Now let me hand it over to Augie to introduce himself.
Hey everyone, my name is Augie Lozano. I'm a solutions architect covering West Texas and Southern New Mexico. I've been with A&M for 4 years now, since August of 2021. And prior to that, I spent a number of years as a post-sales engineer, mainly focusing on large enterprise networks and focusing in advanced routing and security. One of the things that I'm most passionate about is working together to achieve a desired goal. I think it's one thing that we often overlook in IT. We can't do this all by ourselves. And so when we work together and bounce ideas off each other, we always come up with a better result. All right, so after Kevin reviews his lessons learned, I want to talk through a few different incident response solutions that we feel are the most valuable and how we can help you along with that journey. So go ahead and hand it off back to Kevin.
Thanks, Augie. So today I'm going to talk about the mindset and the prep work that separates IR success from disaster cleanup. We've seen firsthand how organizations fall apart under the pressure and how others step up like it's just another Thursday. The NIST cybersecurity framework gives us the structure, but real world executions where it lives and dies at. We'll walk through the 5 functional areas of the NIST cybersecurity framework: identify, protect, detect, respond, and recover. Anchored in lessons learned from actual incidents. While we could spend many of hours talking about each of these topics, we're going to keep it brief today and focused on the lessons learned, and are happy to dive deeper in to each of these individually. So we'll show how IR is often won or lost in the prep phase, and talk about what makes responders calm and decisive, and how to build the muscle memory needed during an incident. Identity is a common threat in nearly every breach, and we'll talk about that in more depth. And you'll walk away with recommendations that work even if you don't have a big team or massive security budgets. Most IR's failures are not because the attackers were elite, but because the organization wasn't ready. We've walked into IRs that no one knew which servers or workstations were still online or offline, who had admin access and domain access, and then what logging was turned on. When that's the starting point, it's already an uphill battle. The scary part, this isn't a rare case. This is more common than we think. That's why preparation before the detection makes or breaks the incident response. Some common things that we see inside a customer environment is there's no asset inventory inside the environment. There's lack or no 24/7 monitoring of the environment. There's no identity access management hygiene inside of the environment. Limited logs or no logs at all inside the environment. And there's no IR response plan that has been practiced inside of the environment. And we'll walk through more in details in slides coming up. So today, are you using a cybersecurity framework inside of your organization? At A&M, we use the NIST cybersecurity framework in just about every aspect of our business, from customer-facing workshops that we provide, or when consulting with customers to build their security practices, and or internally with our own security practice. Why does the framework matter? The NIST cybersecurity framework helps you focus on what matters most to your business, build structure around chaos, shift from reactive to proactive, align technical actions with business risk, speak the same language across IT, security, and the execs. In the following slides, we'll take a deeper dive into these 5 key pillars of the framework and the challenges that customers see with each of these. The first pillar is identify. You can't respond quickly if you don't know what's in your environment. This is why building and maintaining an asset inventory across all environments is key. In one case, a customer got hit with ransomware on a dev system that no one thought was still online and was not being patched, all because the inventory was not being properly maintained. It doesn't matter if it's a spreadsheet or a platform like ServiceNow, as long as someone in the organization is assigned the responsibility for maintaining the inventory and it's audited on a regular basis. And needs to include endpoints, workloads, accounts, applications, and data flows. And if you're using any APIs that may be in the environment, especially in hybrid environments. Risk assessments help you focus on items that matter most to the organization. Don't waste time on protecting everything equally. Identify key assets and focus on those first. Know what's normal looks like inside of your environment on a weekly, monthly, and quarterly basis. For a retail customer, as an example, the holiday seasons look much different than the normal, all the time outside of the holiday season, right? So the rest of the year. This is the foundation. Get this piece right, and everything downstream becomes faster and more streamlined. The next is protect. Isn't just about blocking. It's about reducing the blast radius. The majority of breaches we see involve over-permissioned accounts, stale credentials, MFA not fully deployed, and or unpatched systems in the environment. Start with identity. Who can do what, when, where, and why? Regularly audit service accounts and users' access permissions inside of the environment. Do not hesitate to ask why these permissions are granted to individual users. Then move to hygiene, vulnerability assessments, patching, hardening backups. Nothing flashy, just basic, consistent execution. Think about doing vulnerability and pen testing after any major changes in the environment to validate that the environment is still secure. Don't wait for chaos to realize your backup server has been offline for 6 months. Protect isn't sexy, but it keeps the team members out of the news. Most organizations think that detection means that you've got a SIM with alerts turned on. That's not the full picture. Like we've talked about, understand what normal looks like inside of the environment. If you're not filtering noise and correlating meaningful behavior, you're flying blind. In one incident, the attacker triggered 30 plus alerts, but no one was looking because the team was alert fatigued and was also focused on other duties inside of the environment. You need tuned detections tied to business risks. Focus on anomalies around identity, data access, and privilege escalation. And someone has to own the detection pipeline, whether it's your team or a trusted MDR partner. Augie will talk about that more in later slides. Respond. Do you run table exercises today on a regular basis inside of your organization? When an incident hits, you don't want people asking, who do we call or what the next step is. The orgs that handle incident response well have tested playbooks and run regular tabletop exercises that includes all aspects of the organization. They know what to do when a domain controller is compromised or when a laptop with access to production gets stolen. You also need a clear communication with internal teams, leadership, and possibly legal. Also have a communication channel outside of the normal day-to-day communication channels used by the organization. And let's not forget preserving logs and forensics. If you wipe systems too soon and kill your chances to learn and understand what the incident was made up of. I cannot emphasize this enough. Train like it's real, because when it's real, you want calm and not chaos. So recover isn't everything back online. It's, are things secure again? Do we understand what happened? You'd be shocked how many organizations restore from backups that were compromised. Recovery should include technical fixes, process improvements, and documentation updates. The post-mortem should ask what failed, what worked, what changes are needed. This is where incident response turns into maturity. Don't waste the pain. Use this to get better. If you've not been through an incident before, here are some of the key aspects or the key things that kind of go on when you have an IR team engaged. And some of the expectations with that, right? So rapid engagement, triage is going to be defined in hours. So they're rapidly going to get in the environment and start to do the triage. Clear communication and ownership with a single point of contact, both from the IR team and the customer team. And then the next two will be going on kind of simultaneously, right? So threat containment and root cause analysis. Again, that IR team may want to deploy their own tool sets during this time. So having the ability to deploy their tool sets across the environment is going to be key. And that's where the inventories are also going to be key, right? So they're going to do containment of the threat actor, identify how they got in and what was done. And then they're going to start the evidence collection, forensics, and the legal coordination, right? Maintaining legal chain of custody of the documentation, coordinating with the breach counsel for privilege and notification requirements. Then they'll move into remediation and recovery support. And this varies between the different kind of IR providers out there as to what support they will provide, right? They can definitely help you on how to restore systems, how to make sure that the systems are clean, but they may not actually provide the service to do those restorations, right? So it's key to understand what their processes are and work ahead of time so that you understand what would be required for those people or for those processes. Finally, then the report and executive summary, so timeline of events, key findings and recommendations, and then supporting documentation for insurance, legal counsel, and regulatory notifications. This may vary depending on the regulations or the legal counsel. There may or may not be things in writing. So with a serious incident, right, legal coordination is a critical is just as critical as the technical resources, right? So that's when they're going to bring in the breach counsel, helps protect communications under attorney-client privileges, guides discovery obligations, and ensures that the forensics are defendable as needed. They're often the ones advising on whether customers or regulatory notifications are required and how to do it without making it worse. So incident response just isn't the tech team and the MDR vendor. It's also legal, public relations, and compliance all working in sync. So in wrap up, some kind of key takeaways. Incident response starts well before the first alert, right? Knowing your assets, identities, and dependencies in the environment are going to be critical to when it's time to respond, right? If you have all of those pieces in place and are easily, whether it's a spreadsheet or a platform that has that, right? Having that at your fingertips so that when they need to deploy the tool sets, right? You know exactly how many endpoints are out there, where they're at, all the information that you need to quickly make sure to ensure that process was completed. Protect and monitor the stuff that matters most to the organization, right? That kind of comes back to that identify piece, right? Understanding what's normal in the environment, understanding what day-to-day activities look like, and making sure that you have a clear understanding of what matters most to the organization and have those services prioritized. Plan, test, and rehearse your response. Tabletops are key, right? Start small. Start with a small group inside of the organization, inside the IT organization, and then grow that to the whole entire organization, including C-levels, right? So continue to grow that out, but continue to plan, test, and rehearse those pieces. And then recovery isn't about returning to how things were. It's about using the IR to level up. Smart organizations build resiliencies, others just reboot. There's no magic button for IR, but there's repeatable structure. Preparation is 80% of the work. Teams that document, test, and practice recovery faster, lose less, and build trust across the organization. The NIST cybersecurity framework gives you the map, but the real world power is in how you apply it to your organization. I just spending 2 days with one of our MDR partners, and one of the sessions was their internal CISO. So the corporate side of the business, right? Talked to us about where he outlined it's not a matter of if, but when an incident's going to happen. And that really kind of sunk in as you kind of think about like their job is to respond to incidents, right? And to kind of hear him talk through this really kind of stuck with me, right? And his point wasn't about fear. It was about readiness. If you accept that incidents are inevitable, then really key in on how quickly and efficiently you can respond. That means making sure that the people know their roles, the processes are test and repeatable, and the systems are tuned to support this process. That's what resiliency really looks like and what separates organizations that recover quickly from the ones that end up in the headlines. So ask yourself, if you get the alert today, would you know exactly what to do? If you can't answer that question, yes, we're here to help, and we're happy to work through this process with you. I'm going to hand it over to Augie now for his part.
Hey, everyone. Hey, thanks, Kevin. So, for my portion, I want to go through some recommendations that we feel are the most valuable for your incident response. And I also want to talk through a few different ways that A&M can help you with your incident response and your disaster recovery plans. Most of these should apply no matter how mature your IR plan is. So hopefully this will be helpful in identifying at least one or two ways that we can help you along your security journey. So let's jump right in. Right. First off, let's level set on and talk about what organizations do well and where we see they might need some help. We've seen for the most part that organizations have a really strong handle on maintaining and supporting the business. And, they also have a really good vision of where they want to be. But the problem is that our attack surface is so large that it could be difficult to address all of our concerns at the same time. Do we work on our endpoints next, or DC segmentation? Do we tackle our virtualization security, our backups, the cloud security, a NAC solution, MFA, ZTNA? And I mean, you get it, right? How do we manage all of these without being overwhelmed by the alerts that come with them? Really, your head just starts to spin with all of the different options that you have to take care of. On top of that, there's so many different security vendors and products out there that you could easily get lost in the hype and the marketing of everything. You ask yourself, which vendor is going to be the best solution? Which direction is going to be the most effective? And which direction is give you the most value? So our first recommendation here is, one that we see as the most valuable is to invest in a security or incident response retainer as part of your plan. You need to have a backup plan, essentially. Some of you already have this in place, which is great. You have a clear plan of action and someone to call on during that emergency. And, the most important thing is that you have to remember that there's no 911 for security incidents unless you have an IR retainer. One of the hesitations that we've heard about retainers is that, I have cybersecurity insurance. I'll let them take care of it if something happens. Well, both of those actually help to offset the financial burden that you incur during an incident, but only your retainer is going to help you actually execute and respond as well as recover from that incident. So, we've seen that these retainers become really valuable when it's time to use them. These retainers come in a few different forms. They're offered both by large OEMs and third-party companies. They're typically sold in hours or credits. They usually come with a predefined term and SLA, so you know exactly how long it's going to take for someone to get involved. If you need to engage with them, a team would parachute in virtually, of course, to help with the incident. They might even help you deploy additional tools if they identify gaps. This could be things like endpoint products or DNS or cloud web filters, even additional monitoring and reporting tools. Right, and so some of these organizations will even help you negotiate ransom if it comes to that response. A lot of times that these firms deal directly with the advanced persistent threat groups that attack organizations. So they can more than likely identify who's responsible for the attack and which tactics would work for that group. So they really have a ton of expertise when it comes to this area. But really the biggest value that we see are when organizations take advantage of the additional services that are available as part of the plan. These are the proactive services that will help you optimize your response plan. They can help you build out your IR retainer, build out your IR plan, help you build out IR playbooks. It could provide your team with some additional training like tabletop exercises or readiness assessments. This tell you how your plan and your team's going to hold up during a simulation. You can even take advantage of various penetration testing activities that they provide to identify gaps, whether that's a red teaming exercise or a blue teaming exercise or both as a purple team exercise. You could also even do threat hunting activities to have to sharpen the skills of your team, right? So, from our experience, we've seen that these prepaid IR retainers really help jumpstart your incident response plan. It helps you build that muscle memory that Kevin was talking about. And so really the goal is to use these retainers to help enable your team so that they're more confident in their response. The key takeaway here is that even if you have a solid IR plan, there's always more that you can do to help and test and build on that plan. So how can A&M help? If you're considering a prepaid IR retainer, we can help you weigh out the pros and cons of the different plans to determine which option might fit your requirements. We can help you determine if an OEM plan might work better for you, or if something offered by a third party might work better. There really are a ton of great plans out there, but it's just a matter of choosing which retainer is going to work best for you and your organization. I've outlined some quick recommendations on how to get the most out of your retainer. Starting off with using that retainer to lock in a reduced rate. Most of these incidents will run 200 plus hours. So if you do experience an incident, you may need to ultimately purchase additional hours to fully resolve the problem. But the key benefit here is that it's going to be much less financially than if you would need to engage an emergency IR farm on the fly. The next is to understand your SLA so that you know exactly what to expect when you're involving other teams during these exercises. Also expand the group so that they have involvement in this process. Typically, you start off with your security team first, but then you might want to expand that to the broader team. Everyone should have a handle on protecting the organization. Another tip is to purchase enough hours to use within a calendar year and utilize those services early in the term. We see that it's best to be strategic in scheduling those activities because obviously they take cycles from your team, right? They're going to take cycles for them to be most effective. And we've seen in situations where these exercises may have been scheduled as an afterthought or right before the end of the term. And, that just leads to poor participation. It might even leave your team feeling like the activities are not worth it. So don't keep these in your back pocket. Use them to really strengthen your team ahead of time. Ultimately, we want your team to succeed at preventing these breaches rather than just reacting to them. So earlier, Kevin taught us that a SIM is not enough. We know that we need to ingest data from multiple systems so that we can identify behavior based on, or anomalies based on behavior. We find that most organizations, though, are using this tool to just filter through forensics after something's already happened. So the ultimate goal would be to use some sort of SOAR technology so that we could kick off an orchestrated and automated response so that we could just prevent further damage, right? Attackers are using malicious LLMs nowadays, to do quick forensics. They can craft targeted attacks to your organization, and AI is really helping them evade our security systems. LLMs like Ghost GPT, Ninja GPT, Escape GPT, if you've heard of these, there's a ton of them. They make it so much easier to quickly speed up the attack cycle. And so without using AI on our end, it's going to be nearly impossible to identify threats without being bogged down by a ton of false positives. And so how do we get there? What is the best approach? Do we focus on best of breed? Do we focus on single vendor platforms? And this is honestly one of the biggest questions that we get from organizations in one way or another. Each has its own pros and cons, but ultimately it's going to be different for every organization depending on a ton of factors. Things like the size of your organization, your IT staff, the maturity level of your SOC team, the responsibilities, as Kevin pointed out, that they have to do day to day to support the business, the hours that they work, are they 24/7? All of these dictate which tools might work best for them. In reality, we're going to probably be somewhere in the middle with a hybrid approach, right? But most SOC teams do tend to lean one way or the other. So, you would ask yourself, do you have a team that would benefit from adopting the latest and greatest tools that come with all the extra bells and whistles? And is your team able to support that advanced configuration, right, which is required to stitch together all these third-party systems? And are they also able to implement effective automation? Or is your team the type of team that might benefit from adopting a single vendor that provides multiple solutions, right? And making it easier to tie the telemetry together and utilize more of that built-in technology that built-in automation that they offer. And one of the bigger questions is your organization willing to support, right? Which method are they going to support? Are they going to support more of a best breed approach that may come with a higher price tag, or something that's based on a single vendor platform? One thing that I will say is that while best of breed absolutely has its benefits, we've seen that these tools can be much more difficult to maintain. On top of that, most organizations are already taking a heavy lean towards one OEM, and they often don't realize that they could take advantage of enterprise agreements to add additional security tools or features. In some cases, we've seen that some organizations are already eligible for an EA, and they're just leaving security tools on the table by not formalizing that agreement. So, there really is no right answer, but it really does depend on what's right for your organization. So how can we help you get there? As part of a pre-sales motion, we like to formalize these processes and these decision-making processes by creating what's called an A&M solutions blueprint. Some of you may have already gone through this process for other topics, but in relation to incident response, we can help you evaluate different strategies. We can help you compare competing solutions, based on your requirements. As a solutions architect, our role is to really help you make a determination of which solutions are going to be the best fit for your organization, whether that's best of breed or single vendor platform. And when we create these blueprints, we consider things like your current environment, your requirements, your use cases, and especially your desired outcomes. And then we outline the recommendations and the strategic steps that are needed to get there. If it's something that maybe our professional services team can help you with, then we can also map out a high-level timeline so that you can plan your initiative a little bit better. In some cases, we've been asked to even help in long-term strategy planning, which has led to some of our solutions architects setting up regular office hours, right? And that way they're available to you on site as a technical resource at some sort of recurring cadence, right? Whether it's bi-weekly or monthly. And again, this allows us to have these focused conversations with your team to really understand your long-term goals and your strategies. So this is something that all of our solutions architects can help you with. So, we ask that reach out to your account managers in your SA and ask them to help you blueprint, any one of your initiatives that you might be considering for incident response. All right, so far we've talked about some pretty robust SOC teams at this point. But what if you fall into the group that doesn't really have a formalized SOC team? Or maybe your SOC team is great, but they don't support the business 24/7. Attackers, they want to hit us when we least expect it. And they're typically on different sleep schedules than us. So human eyes on the screen is important at all times, as Kevin was saying earlier. So, in this case, we feel that the best option for you is to augment your SOC team with a managed detection and response solution. There are a ton of options out there. Some providers focus solely on managing OEM environments. Other providers have their own proprietary technology. They all have different approaches. Some of them are more network-based detection. Others focus more on endpoints. And some could do both, which is a plus if your organization needs that, right? Some additional benefits include 24/7 monitoring and threat management, ingestion from third-party sources so that you can detect anomalies based on behavior. The total cost of ownership is typically way lower versus adding people and tools, not to mention all the additional training and ongoing maintenance that is required to support your internal platform. These solutions are pretty scalable, right? They're much easier to expand that tool set as the business changes up or down. Similar to retainers, you can typically establish an SLA for response. And on top of that, you're more likely to have incident resolve much quicker because your MDR provider typically has access to the data that it needs to perform its investigation. They also offer some other features like the ability to track your current risk level, or if you're meeting some sort of compliance criteria. They could be integrated with internal ticketing systems, and they have really cool features like the AI security assistance. You could do threat hunting in plain language. Right, so there's a ton of these benefits here, but a lot of options actually. So really, how we can help is identify which solution might be the best for you. This might be even something that we help you create a blueprint for. So reach out to us and ask us how we can evaluate and compare different options for you. Now, if you're starting to just build out your incident response plan and you suspect that something is malicious happening on your network and you're not really sure what to do, you can reach out to us and we'll help you engage with an emergency IR provider. So A&M doesn't support or doesn't perform any incident response directly, but when we help you find, we can help you find a partner if something catastrophic were to happen. So I put together this, I should say we did. We put together a high-level engagement flow that we think will help you if you think you've been breached and need some additional help. So first and foremost, follow your IR plan. Engage with your MDR provider, engage with your IR returner firm, and your cybersecurity insurance. That order is probably the best course of action. Be sure to follow the tips that Kevin pointed out earlier, preserving your logs and forensics for the IR team. One important thing is to try and limit communication to phone calls only, preferably out of band, right? Attackers could be watching emails and chat spaces and change their attack method if they think that if they're onto you or you're onto them. And if you don't have any of these in place, you can reach out to your A&M account manager and request to create a war room so that we can engage an emergency incident response partner. So our team will help you bridge that gap to make sure that your escalation transitions smoothly to the IR partner. And once they're engaged, the firm will contact you directly and drive their overall strategy. So one thing to note that this can take some time to set up, right? It's, not to mention all the additional time that it takes to gather data and perform the investigation once they're connected. And so, all that extra time really puts you at a severe disadvantage, right? So, that additional times allow them to kick off additional attacks. They can open up additional backdoors or even just quickly execute ransomware if they see that you're onto them, right? So in some cases, you could be worse off by the time that someone's able to respond to you. So, if during remediation, if you need additional help, our PS team can also be engaged to help with some of those efforts outside of that formal IR response process. We can also help backfill your team if you're working on other projects and your team's tied up on the response. And so, hopefully it doesn't cover this, but if it does, just know that you at least have this engagement flow as a plan of action for you. Again, we prefer you to evaluate these services ahead of time, right? So that you aren't reacting, and it's always better to do your shopping early so that you're not having to make a rushed decision later in a stressful moment. Okay, so maybe this discussion needs to be a little bit more comprehensive, or maybe it needs to involve several teams or decision makers. What if you're not ready to spend, or you're not even really sure what to budget, right? And so that brings us to another way that A&M can help you bring some value. And this is by conducting what's called a cyber resilient architecture workshop for your organization. This is where our A&M subject matters will go on site to your facility. We'll have a focused discussion and a whiteboard session to understand what your incident response and disaster recovery plans are. During this workshop, we'll work to understand your environment. We'll learn about your business processes and then identify areas of risk. And we'll do this well before we even start discussing specific products or solutions. So the session typically lasts about 4 hours, and really the goal is to identify potential risks and then map those risks to solutions that will safeguard your process. We'll also use that time to talk through your storage infrastructure, maybe your data protection platform, what that the disaster recovery process actually looks like, and of course, all of the security components that surround these systems. So we typically ask that we get involvement from all your teams within your organization, whether that's the security team, the network team, the data center team, OT teams, and even your IT leadership. Right? All of these groups have really valuable input, and it allows us to get a really better understanding of your true requirements. We also find that we have much more involved discussions when we have a larger team in the room. So it just makes for a better workshop. And again, this is a completely complimentary service. In most cases, we even provide breakfast or lunch so that we keep you fueled up for the discussion. So what should you expect to get out of a workshop motion? So after we complete the workshop, we'll follow up with a debrief meeting to review our findings and our recommendations. You'll receive a scorecard that outlines your strengths and areas of improvement. We'll provide you a list of actionable recommendations that are tailored specific to your use cases and your outcomes. And they're not just technical recommendations, but they're also business process recommendations. Things are going to help you improve your overall security posture. You're also going to receive a prioritization matrix, so you know which initiatives are going to be the most important. And of course, we have other workshops that we can also help provide, things around like zero trust, AI and identity. All of these are really valuable in helping with your overall security posture. Okay, so let's wrap up with some of the key points I called out. Again, there's always more that you could be doing to refine your IR plan. Cybersecurity insurance and IR retainer should be the first step in your incident response plan. You should know who to call. Lean into using AI to distill those alerts and implement some sort of automation to free up your team. Choose the best tools that make your team the most successful, whether that's best of breed or single vendor platform. There really is no right answer there. Consider managed detection and response to fill those gaps in your capabilities, that you always have somebody ready to respond with effective 24/7 coverage. In a pinch, we can help you find an emergency response partner if you're experiencing an incident. And lastly, reach out to us. We're here to help. Reach out to your account team, your account manager, your solutions architect. Ask them to discuss, specific security point products. Ask them to help you plan short-term and long-term initiatives, or even better, let's schedule a workshop so that we could deep dive into your infrastructure and help you identify those true areas of risk. So that's what I have. Questions? Amanda or Kevin, have we seen any questions come through?
We have a couple questions. Augie, I just sent them over to you if you want to start the first one.
Got it. Yeah, okay. So this says, I've been reading about no-cost incident response plans. Are these options something that you recommend? I'd say no, right? I mean, the no-cost incident response plans are typically reserved for the most mature organizations. And we even find that most organizations aren't even eligible for them. You typically need some sort of agreement or a large purchase to be eligible for that. So I would say to stay away from those no cost and focus on the additional benefits that you get from a prepaid retainer. Looks like I could also take the next one.
Yes.
Yeah, so you mentioned needing both cybersecurity insurance and incident response retainers, but my insurance provided incident response as part of the policy. Is that good enough? I mean, it could be, in all honesty, but all insurances work different, right? I would spend some additional time looking into specifically what you get and what that SLA looks like. How are they going to engage that IR firm? How quickly are they going to get involved? How fast can someone get access to your systems? Is it going to be as fast as purchasing, your own IR retainer? And in all honesty, when you engage your cybersecurity insurance firm, it's similar to the motion that you would get with an emergency incident response that I outlined earlier, right? It's going to take some additional time for somebody to get spun up and connected and really make an impact in your network. So we feel that it's both. You need both, right? The cybersecurity insurance as well as an incident response retainer.
And there's one more question in there, and then we can wrap things up.
Yeah, so we've got a question around kind of identity. So in case of a compromised identity, what's effective containment steps that we've seen? And so the key thing is that that's something that you have to act very quickly on. Identity is, again, the kind of the key things that we see in almost all incidences that we've worked with. Identity was one of the key themes inside of that, right? So it's something that needs to be acted on within minutes. And some key kind of things to look at, right? So these first two steps, you can kind of debate which one goes first, but you want to make sure that you kill all the active sessions with that user. And then we recommend disabling that account, not just changing the password, right? Go ahead and disable that account, and then continue to monitor it. And then go through a full investigation of where that account was being used at, what it all touched, and then go through and remediate as needed, right? And then continue to monitor the post containment of that, and make sure that there's no other identities that are displaying similar behaviors as to that one that you just contained.
And then
So good question.
Kevin, I'm not sure if you just saw Richard raised his hand. He has a question saying, a regional attack occurs that hits various clients of A&M. Does A&M have the capabilities, resources, and bandwidth to handle multiple incidents?
So yeah, so how we kind of approach the response piece of it, we have 3 major partners that we work with to be able to respond to incidences. So again, we're not the ones responding to them, but we do have 3 major partners that we've partnered with to provide the IR services. And then if there's additional, professional services that the customer needs to be able to support that incident response, we have the capabilities to do that.
Thank you. Well, thank you, Augie and Kevin, for sharing such valuable insights today. And thank you, everyone, for joining us in the session of the A&M Pathway series. As a quick reminder, today's session is recorded, so we'll be sending you guys the replay link as well as the slides. You can revisit the content and share them with colleagues as well who couldn't attend live. Finally, I wanted to invite you guys all over to our next webinar in the Pathway series, your AI Security Blueprint, Govern, Measure, and Manage with J.R. Garcia. The registration is now open. I dropped that link in the chat, so feel free to register and join our next one. And on behalf of the A&M team, thank you again for spending your day with us, and we look forward to seeing you at the next session. Let us know if you have any questions. I'll be sending you guys an email. Thank you.
Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.